Google have released their newest model called Gemini 2.5 Pro, and probably it is just a newer checkpoint that is a bit more tuned towards coding capabilities as they're describing. Here on the screen, you can see a demo application that I have built using a couple of prompts that I'm going to show you. And from what I'm seeing thus far, this model is quite capable in coding tasks, but I'm not really sure if it is better compared to the other one. Let's find out. About 2 weeks before their main event called Google I/O, the team from Gemini and probably Google DeepMind have released the newer preview version of the 2.5 Pro model. And here they're saying that they are releasing this model that they're calling I/O Edition, and it is expected to be having meaningful improvements, whatever that means, front-end and UI development alongside improvements in fundamental coding tasks, such as transforming and editing code and creating sophisticated agentic workflows. So thus far, I have been using Gemini 2.5 Pro as my daily driver for about a month and probably a month and a half. And I would say that it is a very strong coder, especially in Python and TypeScript. Let's see whether or not this particular model is going to be even better. And here, the president of Replit, which is a company that essentially allows you to use different models within their Replit agent, says that this is the best frontier model when it comes to capability over latency. So if you want somewhat of a speedy model and the ability is weighted over that, you'll probably be choosing Gemini 2.5 Pro. Again, in my experience, when I was using mostly VS Code Copilot, I was probably 80% of the time using Gemini 2.5 Pro. Maybe 15% of the time I was using Sonnet 3.7, and roughly 5 to 10%, give or take, I was using O4 Mini within my coding sessions, especially in editing and agentic tasks. There was a lot of drama with the LLM Arena leaderboard and benchmarks. A lot of people are discussing the efficacy about the leaderboard rankings. So in this video, I'm going to show you the LiveBench leaderboard, and here you note something very interesting. While Gemini 2.5 Pro preview, the newer version, is on top of the older one, at least when it comes to coding, it looks like that the models from OpenAI are still on top of it. And here you see that the coding average is not that much better compared to the older model, which is a bit strange. And for example, on mathematics, it's a bit lower. And overall, this really looks like an iterated version of the other model, probably with some more fine-tuning or even more data that is targeted towards coding tasks. If you want to become a better AI engineer, you can join the ML Expert live bootcamp sessions that are starting May 9th or this Friday. On the first day of the sessions, we're going to be having lectures and lab sessions. We're going to go over production-ready machine learning, what you need to do in order to understand your data, build a data processing pipeline, create a machine learning pipelines for training your models, and then you're going to be able to Dockerize your applications and deploy them to AWS. This will be shown during the lab sessions. On the next day, we're going to go over the AI revolution with the LLMs and other models. We're going to be looking at best practices for prompting and evaluating LLMs. We're going to again go through the lab session for how you can write effective prompts and how you can evaluate and create datasets for your custom tasks. And on the third day, we're going to have a look at how you can build products around LLMs and other AI models. And within the lab session, I'm going to show you how you can fine-tune Qwen 3 within a single notebook and how you can evaluate the trained model on a custom dataset. So if you want to join the live bootcamp sessions. I'm going to link the bootcamp membership area within the description of this video. Thank you. So this is the first demo that I'm going to show you using just a simple HTML and JavaScript. Here you can see that you have some interaction with the mouse when you can essentially hover over the different areas of white. And I would say that it has a nice parallax effect along with the nice gradient of the different colors. So I would say this is a great demo for looking at the capabilities of the model. You can note in the background there are also some stars and it looks pretty cool overall. This is the original prompt that I used for this particular demo. You can see here, create an HTML, CSS and JavaScript application that procedurally generates and animates a full screen visual effect mimicking the Aurora Borealis or the Northern Lights, a calming, eternal, and constantly shifting display of white curtains. So this is the idea. I have also specified a color palette, the shape, background, movement dynamics, etc. So from here, you can see that the model generated this chain of thought, which essentially is a step-by-step plan of what is going to be implemented. And then once this thinking was complete, okay, this is a fantastic challenge, like whatever, I really don't like models that are essentially wasting tokens just to be putting you on a pedestal. But from there, it started with the HTML. And when I run this, it was quite okay, but it gave me a bit of a simpler demo that I wanted to look at. But one very interesting thing and important here is that it suggested some improvements that you can implement. So I just continued with the prompting and said implement the improvements without specifying a bit more. And here, the main improvement that it did, it was to create a simplex noise integration, which is essentially an algorithm that is going to be displaying the dynamics or changing the dynamics from the simpler previous one compared to the what you're seeing on the screen. Personally, I don't know how I can implement this, and I can't really vouch for whether or not this implementation is correct. But it provided me with the updated code, at least for the noise calculations. And then I asked to implement improvements that it will make it interactive with the mouse, or you will be able to work with the mouse on top of the visualization. And then it continued with that, give me another essentially HTML code. And then I hit an error. And I said, when I open the HTML file, it shows a blank screen. Essentially, it had an unexpected token in the JavaScript section of the HTML. And then it continued with the implementation. And finally, this is essentially the end result that you're seeing. So it took roughly 4 prompts and 1 error within the code to get to what you're seeing in the final demonstration. The next thing that I wanted the model to build for me was a 2D platformer game. And you can see here the game itself. You can move the player, essentially use the spacebar to jump. And then you have a special power called Chrono-shift. And if you press X, you see that you're essentially going into another dimension. You can jump through here. And then when you again press X, you can go to the other dimension. So essentially it is a dimension shift game or a platformer. And it looks pretty cool, actually, I would say. And you can use some power-ups. They're called data fragments. And yeah, it looks very, very cool, actually, this game. To create this game, the initial prompt is much more detailed compared to the visualizations that we did before. So here you can see that I'm saying that this is a Chrono-shift courier, a 2D pixel art platformer with reality bending mechanics. Most of this prompt was further written by Gemini 2.5 and expanded based on my original idea. And it created this very nice specification for the game. You can see here, player starts in Prime, encounters a white gap, must shift to Echo, which is the other universe, where a platform now bridges the gap. So essentially this is a discussion about the level design within the app. And at the end, I've added that it can use JavaScript libraries or scripts if it has to. And then based on that, again, it started essentially with a nice overview of a plan within the chain of thought. It even added some code, as you can see here. And after the thinking was complete, you can see that it started with the HTML. Again, this was a game that is essentially created within a single file. And after the first iteration was complete, you can see that it output a lot of code. From what I have experimented with this model, it is not afraid to essentially output a lot of tokens within the responses. And when I run this, I said that I got a black screen when I opened the HTML file. It tried to give me a correction, but what I found that it actually did was to put print statements for debugging purposes and some crazy colors. So after I have executed this, I'm essentially giving it, since it is a multimodal model, the errors that are occurring within my console. These are the console logs. And then from there, it said that, thank you for providing the console log. This is incredibly helpful. Okay, a bit too much again, but it got the errors. And then after it completed all of these with the newly corrected code, essentially this was now what you're seeing. Unfortunately, it had a very nice idea of giving me this player sprite, which is a base 64 encoded image. And honestly, I haven't tried to use this image, but unfortunately, this wasn't able to be loaded within the game. I'm really interested whether or not this image can be actually used and if it is a valid base 64 image. I have tried the base 64 image and unfortunately it is not a valid image. So let's continue with the final demo. So you can see here the stargazer and it says click any star to begin. And this game really blew my mind. Let me show you. If you pick, for example, this star right here, you can see that you have this chain reaction. And of course, you want to have this highest possible score. Let's try something else. Okay, a bit of a higher score. Okay. I think that this game is quite fun actually. And it says that you have a new high score. The prompt for this game was again mostly generated by Gemini 2.5 Pro based on my very succinct original idea. And you can see that it provided a lot of mechanics and visual wow factor with nice explanations of what should be done. Also, it has some sound design. I wasn't able to get any sound from this game, so probably this isn't working. And it is great that it is working on the canvas, so this game is performing quite well. So we got the thoughts, which essentially are again another plan or chain of thought. But after that, something very interesting happened, and it just spit out the HTML along with the JavaScript code. And at the end, it didn't explain anything compared to the previous ones. So this was a bit strange. Note that on all examples, I'm using a temperature of 1. And then I just said implement improvements without any suggestions. But within the chain of thought, it considered some improvements that need to be made. And then then continued with explaining a lot of the improvements, adding those. And then after the improvements were added, essentially this is the final game that we got. Only with 2 prompts, I was able to create this Starlight Drifter game. So this is it for the newly updated Gemini 2.5 Pro. It's going to be my new daily driver, and I'm going to try it with other tasks than coding, of course. Let me know about your experience with the newly updated version of this model and where and how you're using it. Thank you for watching, guys. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also, join the Discord channel that I'm going to link down into the description of this video. And go join the ML Expert Pro live bootcamp sessions. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.